he made a different choice based on a combination of piety and politics. And that's what Islam is. And before I go on, let me define the key terms of the motion. First, religion. The most common definition of religion you will find is the universal quest of humans in search of the sacred or the holy. That search is expressed intellectually, it's expressed in practice, it is expressed in fellowship. And you look at a religion like Islam, on an intellectual level, it was expressed by the founder of Islam as a demolition of all other gods. Polytheism had to end, and all humanity had to be united under one God. From those of you who are familiar with history, and I think a crowd like this is, you know that no monotheistic religion can be a religion of peace. No monotheistic religion is a religion of peace, and definitely not Islam. Monotheistic religions know periods, lengthy periods of peace, but they also know lengthy periods of war. In terms of practice, yes, in Islam, you practice charity, you go to Hajj, you pray, all of that. But in terms of practice, there's also the expression, there's the concept of jihad. And I find it a pity that Ziba Khan did not mention that concept, which is central to Islam's conquests and Islam's success. The founder of Islam, Muhammad, in his lifetime, conducted 65 campaigns of war that were all successful. And that militaristic history of Islam is well documented. Just go Google it. And if you don't find it on Google, go to all those former empires that were conquered. The combination of a history of empire, of conquest, also leaves a legacy behind. And that legacy is the thrusting together of people of different ethnicities, languages, etc. So even if that empire declines, the likelihood of conflict, of war, is probable, it's high, especially where there is a fault line. That's where Samuel Huntington had a point. That history of militarism, combined with the legacy of empire, those 2 points alone belie the motion tonight that Islam is a religion of peace. But that's not all. When empires decline, those who are defeated, and the Muslim empire declined, those who are defeated sometimes find themselves in a state of victimhood. That state of victimhood is exploited by the leadership or those self-appointed leaders of Islam. And what do you see? You see a number of people, and I concede it's a minority, who believe that Islam is under siege. A mentality of victimhood tells those who are conquered, who are vanquished, that the problem was caused by external powers, not by us, and that systematic denial within Islam after the 19th century to blame only outsiders, exempt Islam from blame, from the explanation, what went wrong. Yes, it was external. Yes, Muslims were humiliated. Yes, they were conquered. Yes, they were colonized. But how much was also because of the flaws of Islam? And that takes me to the point of absolutism. When the West went into its scientific revolution, why wasn't it Muslims? Muslims were the first scientists, arithmetic, logic, etc. They were great. Why didn't they get into that scientific revolution? Why were they left behind? Was it only because of external factors, or were there internal flaws? That combination of a status of victimhood and the absolutism, the demand that you can never revise or reflect on the Quran, that you can never, never, ever refute what Muhammad said, you can only follow his example. that absolutism, combined with that status of victimhood, is also enlarges the likelihood of conflict. And those two combined, like the other two factors,
Ayaan
belie...
Hirshila, your time is up.
Thank you. That belies the motion. I'll keep my last two factors for the time I have remaining. Thank you.
We are halfway through the opening round of this Intelligence Squared U.S. debate. I'm John Donvan. We have 4 debaters, 2 teams of 2, fighting it out over this motion: Islam is a religion of peace. You have heard from the first 2 debaters in their opening statements, and now on to the third. I'd like to introduce Majid Nawaz, who is director of the Quilliam Foundation, and he is, in a way, has an amazing biography. Several years back would have been America's nightmare. He was a radical. He was imprisoned in Egypt while on a trip there, though he's born in the UK, was in Egypt and tortured for being a radical, and something happened to you in prison. A 180-degree turn in one sentence. What was it?
In one sentence?
Yeah.
We're talking about 4 years there.
Yeah.
Amnesty International. But I'll explain that in my, hopefully.
Fair enough. Ladies and gentlemen, Majid Nawaz.
Thank you. Thank you. Could I indulge the audience and just ask for a round of applause for Zeba's mum? She's just over there, and I think she did a wonderful job. Yeah. To raise your daughter to speak Hebrew in the current climate is amazing, and I applaud you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I want to begin by just stating what this debate is not about. This debate is not about making excuses for terrorism. Basically, my career is to challenge extremism and terrorism in the West and also in Muslim-majority countries. I've just flown right in from Pakistan, where I've been building the foundations for the first nationwide social movement to challenge extremism and promote democratic values in Pakistan. And I'm proud to announce that just today, we gained our 10,000th member on Facebook. So this debate is not about making excuses for suicide bombers, even inside Israel. We make no apologies and no excuses on this panel for terrorism, for extremism, and for people who kill innocent civilians, including inside Israel. This debate acknowledges, we on our panel, Zeba and myself, acknowledge that Muslims do need to speak out against extremism and to challenge it, and more Muslims need to do that more actively. We acknowledge that Muslims bear a responsibility in reclaiming their faith from those, the minority, who have hijacked Islam and who have captured the public imagination in their definition of Islam. We acknowledge that, and I am, in my own person, a manifestation of that effort, as is Zeba in the way she was raised. So we acknowledge that as well. This debate, in fact, is an appeal. It's not, also, before I move to the fact that it's an appeal, it's also not a threat. So we're not going to argue here tonight that if you don't vote for the motion, that somehow Muslims are going to rise up and attack you for insulting Islam. That's not the case. This is an appeal. And it's an appeal to your good sense and your good character and to what you know inside you. This is actually not a debate for Islam at all. This is a debate for peace. And we are not arguing for Islamic peace. We are arguing for Islam to be, with all other religions and all other beliefs and those who have no faith, to be part of the effort to create peace in the world. So this is a debate for peace. It's a debate, and I'm asking you all to vote tonight, not for Islam, but to vote for peace and to help contribute the efforts of all of us around the world who are working for peace. Because there were people like me who spent 13 years of our life working to create hatred. I used to believe that Islam is not a religion of peace. In fact, I used to believe that Islam mandates war. I used to believe and propagate across the world, in more than 3 countries, that Islam mandates war and mandates the creation of a state that will have at its heart of its foreign policy, a policy to create conquest. I called it jihad. I believed Islam was not a religion of peace because I adopted an ideology at 16 years old and stuck with that until my imprisonment, and then after I was released from prison when I was 28 years old. By that time, I had established this ideology in Pakistan and in Denmark and contributed to its growth in Egypt. But I learnt in prison 2 things. One was what I'm appealing to you here today, and that was when people hand out an olive branch, it does work. People I had considered my enemy, people I had considered the enemy of my people, Amnesty International, with their advocation of human rights that I believed was a tool to colonize the minds of Muslims, adopted me as a prisoner of conscience. And by handing me that olive branch, I recognized that there was goodness in the world, and there were people who, regardless of the provocation they find in the world today, are still willing to fight for peace, and are still willing to redefine the debate. And that's what I'm asking you to do here tonight. Because by redefining the debate, and by insisting that they would not allow my hatred to define for them the way in which they viewed me, they changed my heart. I went on and took that message forward and helped establish the world's first counter-extremism think tank in the West. Then went into Pakistan to help establish the first nationwide counter-extremism movement in Pakistan. And as I said, we have 10,000 supporters before we've even launched of Muslims from Pakistan who are helping us to redefine the debate, who are not allowing the minority of extremists to hijack Islam, to monopolize its definition, and then define for us all that this should be a world of war, not just Islam as a religion of war, but as you heard from our co-panelist here on the other side, all religions should be religions of war in their minds. Whether that's because they want to fight or because they're not believers in religions and they wish to challenge religion from that basis. And so I make an appeal to all of you tonight to help us redefine this debate. And the second thing that happened to me in prison that helped me change my mind was that I had the opportunity, I won't say good fortune because it wasn't really that, but the opportunity to mix with some of the leading founding jihadists of the world inside an Egyptian prison, ironically built by the British. And what I learned was that I had been extremely arrogant. I had suffered from the failure that I saw here tonight in my respected colleague's presentation. I had failed to contextualize history. And when I was this young and angry 24-year-old, who yes had grievances, who'd been stabbed at multiple times growing up on the streets of Essex, who had been falsely arrested on a number of occasions because of racial profiling, I was a very angry young man. But I went to men in prison who had been in prison since I was 3 years old, and then I met them at 24. And they had abandoned their previous terrorist ideology, and I had the arrogance to try and convince them that they had sold out, that they didn't understand that true Islam was a religion of war. And they said to me, young lad, come and sit down, we'll tell you a story or two. And over the course of the 4 years, after having learnt Arabic, after having memorized half of the Quran, after having studied the theology, though myself not being too much of a religious man, I came to the conclusion that Islam had been hijacked and abused and politicized by something that I now refer to as Islamism, the modern ideology, that owes more to post-World War I European fascism than it does to the traditions of Islam. And these former jihadists, among them the assassins of Egypt's former president, Anwar Sadat, who was killed in 1981, they had come to the same conclusions. And so I appeal to all of you, as my time runs out, there's much more to say, to vote to help us all to redefine this motion, to redefine this world, because only by refusing to accept the paradigms that we find imposed upon us, can we refute change. And that's exactly how the civil rights movement in America tackled this issue when they were faced with such situations in the past. Thank you for your patience and thank you for your time.
Our motion is Islam is a religion of peace. And now to speak against the motion, Douglas Murray. He's a best-selling author and founder and director of the Center for Social Cohesion, also a citizen of the United Kingdom, a member of the Church of England. Until recently, you said that your study of the Quran, you said this in print, made you an atheist.
That's right. I said Muhammad made me an atheist. The publisher said at the time, that's a pretty provocative headline. I said, well, get somebody to do the next one. She said, I could find a Catholic who could say Muhammad made me a Catholic. I said, how about trying to make it a 3-part article and get a third one, somebody saying Muhammad made me a Jew? And that one would be the trouble.
Douglas Murray, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here tonight. I'm sorry to make this panel rather Brit-centric after my colleague Majid. This isn't an attempt by us to have a British takeover of the old colony or anything like that. But I was coming earlier from my own fallen empire, referring back to my friend and colleague Ayan's comments.